The galaxy had known order for eons. Every species, from the towering and ancient Kateri to the ever-quiet Zalori, understood one unspoken truth. The universe was governed by laws. Laws not just of physics, but of diplomacy, power, and survival. A finely tuned balance, crafted by cosmic forces older than time itself, ensured peace and stability. To disrupt it was to risk extinction. Every civilization adhered to these rules, whether they were written in the scrolls of ancient texts or unspoken traditions passed down through generations. The consequences for breaking them were always clear: annihilation, exile, or worse. At the heart of this complex web of cosmic governance stood the Galactic Council, a body composed of the galaxy's most powerful races. It was said that the Council maintained peace and order in the galaxy, resolving disputes, making laws, and ensuring that no species would rise to challenge the status quo. And for millennia, it had worked. The universe turned like a well-oiled machine, its gears clicking into place in perfect harmony. But this order was about to face its first true test. From the distant and relatively insignificant planet of Earth, a lone ship, the Vanguard, slipped into the depths of space. Its destination, the Galactic Council. It was the first human-made vessel ever to leave the solar system with an official mandate. The crew of the Vanguard, led by Captain Amelia Rhodes, was tasked with representing humanity in the galactic arena, a daunting challenge, considering that humanity had never even dreamed of being part of the larger cosmic community until a few short years ago. As the ship neared the galactic capital, a glittering metropolis floating in the heart of a nebula, the crew stood on edge. The vessel's hull hummed with quiet anticipation, and the crew, though anxious, had been briefed thoroughly. The expectations were clear. Humanity's representatives were to maintain humility, defer to the established powers, and above all, show respect for the established order. The crew was a mix of military officers, scientists, and diplomats, each chosen for their ability to navigate the complex social dynamics of interspecies relations. Captain Rhodes, however, was not quite like the others. She had a fire in her, a rebellious streak that had gotten her into trouble more than once. She had always believed that rules, especially those that stifled progress, were meant to be challenged. But this wasn't the time for that. Or was it? As the Vanguard docked at the enormous space station, the crew made their way to the Grand Assembly Hall. There, they would meet the members of the Galactic Council. The room was as magnificent as it was intimidating. Golden columns rising to impossible heights, alien symbols carved into every surface, glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. A dozen species from across the galaxy, each with their own strange physiologies, sat in tense silence, waiting for humanity's representatives to enter. Captain Rhodes and her crew entered, all too aware that they were under scrutiny. The council members eyed them, some with disdain, others with curiosity, but all with a kind of detached superiority. Humanity was, after all, a mere infant in the grand scheme of the cosmos. To them, the humans were little more than a curiosity, a species barely scraping by on a backwater planet. But Amelia Rhodes wasn't one to be intimidated. She strode forward with the confidence of someone who knew that, in a universe of rules, humanity had one key advantage: their utter disregard for them. She met the gaze of the council, and without hesitation, spoke the first words they would ever hear from humanity. "We're here to make our own rules," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. The room froze. The gravity of her words sank in. The universe had rules. Humanity didn't care. The silence in the council chamber stretched on, thick with tension. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself had frozen, the hundreds of eyes in the room fixated on Captain Amelia Rhodes. She stood there, unwavering, while her crew exchanged nervous glances behind her. They had all been briefed. This was supposed to be a diplomatic mission, a gesture of goodwill and humility. Yet Amelia's words had shattered that carefully crafted veneer. The council members exchanged looks, their expressions a mix of disbelief and disdain. It wasn't so much the arrogance of humanity that shocked them, it was the sheer boldness. Every race in the galaxy, from the ancient and powerful Kiteri to the elusive Zalori, knew that the first rule of the universe was unspoken, but universally accepted. Never, under any circumstances, challenge the established order. And here stood these humans, daring to do just that, without a hint of fear or shame. A deep, resonant voice echoed across the chamber, and all eyes turned to the largest figure in the room, a being that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence, his body a fluid mass of dark energy. He was Acelerath, the leader of the Galactic Council, a being of immense power and age, known for his intellect and measured approach to galactic politics. The mere sight of him was enough to inspire fear in lesser beings. "You speak boldly, human," he said, his voice a low hum that vibrated through the chamber. "But you are a child among giants. You think that you can simply disregard the laws that govern the very fabric of this galaxy." Captain Rhodes met his gaze without flinching, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew it was coming, but she wasn't about to back down now. "I don't think we can disregard them, Celerath," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "I know we can." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the council. It was unheard of. Humanity's entire race was seen as a naive, chaotic force, barely holding onto its place in the galaxy. To think that they could challenge the ancient power structures without even flinching was absurd. One of the council members, a sleek, silver-skinned Valerian named Kylus, leaned forward. "Your species has no concept of the balance that exists here," she said coldly. "The rules are not just a formality. They are the foundation of the universe itself. Without them, chaos would reign, and the very fabric of reality could unravel." "We've lived in chaos," Rhodes shot back. "It's how we thrive." The council's reaction was immediate. The Valerians exchanged worried glances, while the Kiteri, a race known for their military might and precision, growled in displeasure. For them, order was not just a principle, it was survival. Celerath's eyes narrowed, and the air in the chamber grew heavier. "You would risk the stability of the galaxy for the sake of your own pride?" he asked. "You would put your species in jeopardy for the sake of a momentary disruption?" "I'd risk anything to see what's possible," Rhodes replied, the words coming from a place deeper than mere defiance. "And we've barely scratched the surface of what humanity can do when we stop following the rules. Maybe it's time for someone to see what happens when we make our own." There was a sharp intake of breath from the assembly. This wasn't just boldness. This was a challenge to their very way of life. Celerath stood still for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. Then, with a subtle wave of his hand, the tension in the room shifted. "We will see," he said slowly. "You will learn what happens when you break the first rule, human. But be warned, you are playing a dangerous game." The council fell into a hushed murmur as Celerath's words hung in the air. The humans had done it now. They had broken the first rule of the universe, and they were being watched closely. Captain Rhodes turned away from the council's gaze, her heart still racing. Her crew stood in stunned silence behind her, unsure whether they had just made a powerful ally or a deadly enemy. But one thing was clear. The stakes had just been raised. This wasn't about diplomacy anymore. It was about survival. And for the first time, humanity had drawn a line in the stars. The days that followed the council meeting were a blur for Captain Amelia Rhodes and her crew. The audacity of their words in the council chamber had set the galaxy abuzz. While the humans believed they were simply asserting their right to exist as equals in the galactic arena, the other races saw something much more dangerous. Humanity was a wild card, unpredictable and uncontrollable. The news spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Some species scoffed at the humans' arrogance, dismissing them as insignificant. Others, however, took a far more serious view. The universal balance was delicate, and humanity's defiance had shaken the foundations of a system that had stood for millennia. And as expected, there were consequences for breaking the first rule. 2 weeks after the council meeting, the Vanguard received an unexpected and cryptic transmission. The message was brief, almost too brief, but the warning was clear. The balance will be corrected. The source of the transmission was untraceable, but the weight of the words sent chills through the crew. Captain Rhodes stared at the message in disbelief, her mind racing. She had anticipated backlash, of course, but she hadn't expected this level of ambiguity. Who was this balance that the message referred to? What did they mean by correction? The answer came sooner than they expected. Late one evening, as the crew settled into their routines aboard the Vanguard, the ship's sensors suddenly flared to life. Blaring alarms and flashing red, the ship lurched violently as something unseen and powerful swept across the space surrounding them. Gravity fluctuated, causing the crew to stumble as objects flew from their places. Then the lights flickered before plunging the entire ship into darkness. "We're under attack," shouted Lieutenant Sophia Martinez, one of Rhodes' most trusted officers. She scrambled to the control panel, her fingers flying over the damaged console. "We're not getting any response from external sensors, Captain. It's like something's suppressing our systems. The ship's systems are going haywire." Captain Rhodes gritted her teeth. What the hell is going on? Just then, the ship's external cameras, barely functioning, caught a glimpse of the entity responsible for the chaos. A massive shape loomed in the distance, shimmering like a mirage yet exuding an aura of cold, crushing power. It looked like a shadow, an abyss in space. The Vanguard was trapped, caught within a gravitational pull that seemed unnatural. "It's not a ship," said Ensign Cato, the ship's chief engineer, his voice trembling. "It's something else, some kind of cosmic entity." Before anyone could react, the shadow being sent a wave of energy toward the ship, warping space around them. The vessel groaned in protest, as if the very fabric of reality was being bent to the will of this unknown force. The crew was helpless as the massive entity began to envelop the Vanguard, and the crew's attempts to regain control were futile. "We're being pulled toward it," Lieutenant Martinez cried, looking out the viewports with growing panic. "If we don't get out of this, we're done." The ship's systems came back online just long enough for a haunting message to blare over the intercom. It was a voice, calm, omnipotent, and impossibly ancient. "You have broken the first rule, Captain Rhodes. The balance is no longer stable. This is the consequence of defying the cosmic laws. You will learn what happens when the universe is disrupted." The voice was a warning, but it was also a promise. The crew understood now. The Vanguard wasn't just under attack, it was being taught a lesson. This entity, an enforcer of the universe's unyielding laws, had come to show humanity the cost of their defiance. The universe was not kind to those who didn't play by its rules, and the humans, it seemed, were about to feel that cost firsthand. Captain Rhodes stared at the entity on the view screen, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Her crew was in danger. Her mission was slipping out of her control. But even in the face of overwhelming force, one thing was clear. Humanity had made its mark, and now the universe had no choice but to respond. And they wouldn't back down. The entity that had attacked the Vanguard seemed to dissipate as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind an eerie silence in its wake. The ship, though damaged, had miraculously survived. But the crew knew the respite was only temporary. The ominous message had made it clear that the balance of the universe was now tipped, and humanity, by their very defiance, had triggered a chain of events that couldn't be undone. Captain Amelia Rhodes stood at the center of the command deck, staring out into the cold void of space. The Council's warning had been unambiguous, and the Cosmic Enforcer's attack was only the beginning. Her mind raced with strategies, but there was no clear path forward. They were not equipped to fight an entire galaxy's worth of ancient beings, let alone a force that could manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. "Captain," said Lieutenant Martinez, her voice laced with concern, "the damage is substantial, but we can make the repairs. The real problem is that we've drawn a target on our backs. Every race in the galaxy is going to be watching us and hunting us." Rhodes nodded grimly. "I know, and we can't afford to stay in one place for too long. We need to regroup, find allies, and—" Before she could finish, the communications officer, Ensign Louis, interrupted her. "Captain, I'm detecting a transmission, encrypted, but it's coming through with an unknown source. It's not from any of the galactic powers we know." The crew exchanged puzzled glances. "Patch it through," Rhodes ordered. Her interest piqued. The transmission crackled for a moment before a low, gravelly voice came through the speakers. "You've made a bold move, human," the voice said, its tone almost amused. "Most species would have been annihilated by now. But you've stirred something far older than the Council or the Enforcers, something that is far beyond their reach." Captain Rhodes' heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I am the Shroud," the voice responded. "A race that exists outside of the laws that bind the galaxy. We've watched you, human. We've watched your species since the moment you dared to defy the first rule. And now, I offer you an alliance. An alliance with a race outside of the known laws of the universe." The crew exchanged confused looks. Rhodes was cautious, her instincts telling her this could be another trap. But there was something in the voice, a sense of knowing, of power, that made her pause. "What do you want in return?" Rhodes asked, her voice steady despite the unease stirring in her chest. "Simple," said the Shroud. "We want to see the universe burn. The Council, the Guardians, the cosmic laws, they've held the galaxy in their grip for too long. Their time is ending. And you, Captain Rhodes, you've shown that humanity has the will to break free from their shackles." Captain Rhodes' brow furrowed. An alliance with such a being was dangerous, almost certainly suicidal. But then again, what other choice did they have? The Enforcers, the Council, the Guardians, they all held the galaxy's power in their hands. And humanity. They were alone. If they were to survive, they would need more than just firepower. They would need a way to break the very rules that had ensnared the galaxy for millennia. "We're not interested in burning the galaxy down," Rhodes replied, her voice firm. "But we are interested in challenging the system that's been holding us back." There was a brief silence on the other end, then a low chuckle. "Then perhaps, human, we do have something in common. I'll need more than just words." "Prove you can help us," Rhodes said, her trust in the mysterious being still fragile. The Shroud's voice became serious. "Very well. We will show you the power to disrupt the laws that govern this universe. But be warned, once you start, there is no turning back." Rhodes hesitated, then made her decision. "Show us." The months following Captain Rhodes' conversation with the Shroud were some of the most intense and unnerving of her life. The enigmatic entity's offer had been clear: power, raw and untamed, a way to break the galactic laws that had oppressed humanity for so long. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. And yet, every step they took toward it felt like they were walking a razor's edge. The Vanguard had been repaired, though the scars from the attack remained. The crew had grown accustomed to their new reality, one where their ship was a hunted vessel, constantly on the run. Every star they passed felt like it could be the last. The Galactic Enforcers were relentless, sending waves of energy and weapons at them, but nothing seemed to slow the Vanguard down. Thanks to the strange power the Shroud had shared with them, they could navigate the most perilous regions of space with ease. Yet the price of this newfound power was becoming apparent. The strange technology and knowledge they had been given came with a series of dark warnings. It was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered before, a combination of dark energy manipulation, quantum physics, and ancient knowledge far beyond their comprehension. Captain Rhodes had begun to notice changes in herself, in the crew. There were moments when she felt her mind stretch, bending with impossible thoughts and calculations. Time itself seemed to warp around her as if she could see the underlying patterns of the universe. It was exhilarating, but terrifying. She had never felt so connected to the vastness of space, and yet it felt like she was losing herself in the process. "Captain," Ensign Lai called out from the communications console, breaking her from her trance. "We're receiving another transmission. This one's different. It's from Solaroth, the leader of the Galactic Council." Rhodes snapped out of her reverie, her heart sinking. She hadn't heard from the Council since their first meeting, but she knew this wasn't going to be a friendly message. "Patch it through," she ordered. The image of Solaroth appeared on the screen, his dark, shifting form somehow more intimidating than ever before. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but laced with an unspoken menace. "Captain Rhodes," he began, his voice cold as ice, "we have allowed you to play your games, but you have gone too far. The disruption you've caused cannot be ignored any longer. Your defiance of the galactic laws is now a threat to the very fabric of the universe. You've drawn the attention of powers beyond your understanding, powers that will not hesitate to extinguish you." Captain Rhodes stood tall, her eyes hardening. "We don't answer to you anymore, Solaroth. We're making our own path now." The Shroud had warned them that the galaxy would fight back, and now, it seemed, the time had come. The power that humanity had gained was not without consequence. The Council wasn't just a governing body. They were enforcers of a cosmic system, a system that had been in place for eons, holding together the very foundation of the universe. And now, that system was beginning to fracture. "Then prepare yourself, human," Solaroth said, his gaze unyielding. "Prepare for the consequences of your actions. We will see just how long your defiance lasts when the universe itself turns against you." The transmission cut off, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Rhodes' mind raced. She had thought they were prepared, but with every step they took, the stakes kept rising. The power the Shroud had given them, power that could break the rules of the universe, came at a steep price. It was clear now. The galaxy's ancient powers would not let humanity's rebellion go unchecked. "We can't stop now," Rhodes murmured to herself. She turned to her crew, her eyes fierce with resolve. "We've come too far. If we're going to survive, we need to stand our ground. We fight for our place in this galaxy." The crew nodded, their expressions resolute. They had all come to the same conclusion. The universe had rules. Humanity had broken them. Now, they would have to face the consequences and fight back. The calm before the storm was always the most deceptive. It allowed the enemy to prepare, to gather strength, to sharpen its weapons. But for Captain Amelia Rhodes and her crew aboard the Vanguard, the calm was not a reprieve. It was a false sense of security, a lull in the oncoming chaos they knew was inevitable. The last transmission from Solaroth had struck a chord deep within Rhodes' mind. The Council, the Enforcers, and the cosmic powers, they were all closing in. Every move they made was being watched. Every move had consequences. The universe's laws, it seemed, were not meant to be broken. But humanity had already crossed that line. For the next several days, the crew worked tirelessly. The strange power given to them by the Shroud had transformed their capabilities, but it came with a heavy burden. The manipulations of quantum energy had given the Vanguard unmatched speed and adaptability, but it also affected their senses, altering their perception of reality itself. It wasn't long before the crew started seeing things, visions, fleeting images of strange alien landscapes, memories of other lives they couldn't place. The deeper they delved into the power, the more distorted their understanding of the universe became. Rhodes felt it the most. The strange visions, the voice of the Shroud whispering in the back of her mind, and the overwhelming sense that the universe was watching, waiting for her to slip up. But she couldn't afford to hesitate now. They had come too far. "We need to keep moving," she ordered, pacing the command deck. "We can't stay in one place for too long. The Council will be coming for us. The Shroud promised us power, but they also warned us of the cost. We need to be ready." Her officers nodded, but there was an edge of uncertainty in their eyes. Even the most seasoned members of the Vanguard's crew were struggling with the toll of the power they now wielded. Yet none of them spoke the words that were on their minds. Could they control this power, or would it consume them like it had others before them? A warning alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship, breaking the tense silence. Ensign Lay quickly turned to the communications panel. "Captain, it's coming in fast. A fleet. The Galactic Council's enforcers. They'd found us." Rhodes' heart sank. She had known this moment would come, but the reality of it was still a shock. The fleet they were facing wasn't just a few ships. Hundreds of vessels, advanced, ancient, and lethal, now converged on the Vanguard. The Council had no intention of letting humanity's defiance go unanswered. "We need to engage them," said Lieutenant Martinez, her voice steady, but with a hint of urgency. "We've got enough power to fight back, but we can't outrun them for long." Rhodes knew there was no way they could match the Council's might in a direct fight. Even with the power from the Shroud, the odds were stacked against them. They had no choice but to use the power they had been given in ways that even they didn't fully understand. "Prepare the systems," Rhodes commanded. "We'll use the Shroud's technology to bend space. Let's show them what happens when you push humanity into a corner." The crew rushed to their stations as the massive fleet closed in. A wave of energy built around the Vanguard, its engines humming with raw, untapped force. But Rhodes could feel it, the weight of the decision she was making. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something far bigger, humanity's place in the universe. The massive fleet loomed closer. The countdown had begun, and as the first shots were fired, the Vanguard shot forward at impossible speed, tearing through space with a force that sent shockwaves through the very fabric of reality. In that moment, Rhodes realized the truth. They had become the storm, and now they would have to face the consequences. The battle that ensued was nothing short of catastrophic. The space around the Vanguard became a chaos of energy and debris, the fabric of reality itself stretching and warping as humanity's defiant ship clashed against the might of the Galactic Council's enforcers. Every shot fired, every shockwave sent out from the Vanguard's hull, resonated with the strange, raw power they had been gifted by the Shroud. They were no longer just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with the very laws of the universe, bending and breaking them as if they were mere suggestions. "Captain," Lieutenant Martinez shouted, her voice urgent as the control screens flickered and pulsed with strange, erratic data. "The Enforcer's ships are adapting faster than we expected. They're countering our energy pulses. They're learning how we're using the Shroud's power." Rhodes clenched her jaw. The raw energy at their disposal was overwhelming, but it wasn't enough. The Council's ships, ancient and precise, had been built with one purpose: to uphold the cosmic order. They knew how to fight against any disturbance, any anomaly. Humanity's newfound power, though formidable, was untested in the face of such a sophisticated enemy. "They can't adapt to everything," Rhodes muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "We have one advantage: they don't know how we think." "Captain," Ensign Lai interrupted her thoughts, his voice shaky. "There's another fleet. It's not the Council's. It's a different signature entirely. The fleet's familiar. It's the Shroud's forces." Rhodes' mind raced. If the Shroud's fleet had arrived, it could only mean one thing: they had not been acting alone. The Shroud had never been clear about their intentions, but now it seemed their cryptic promises were more than just empty words. The mysterious race had come to back humanity's defiance, not just in spirit, but in force. "We're not alone," Rhodes said, her voice filled with a cold determination. "Get ready. This is our chance." The sky above them rippled with energy as the Shroud's fleet appeared, its ships swarming like dark shadows, appearing to move with an unnatural fluidity. Their arrival shifted the tide of the battle. The Enforcers, caught off guard by the unexpected support, scrambled to realign their strategy. The Council's ships, normally the unchallenged rulers of space, were now facing a much larger force. one that operated by entirely different rules. The two fleets clashed in a dazzling explosion of light and energy, a storm of destruction that sent shockwaves through the surrounding space. The fabric of reality itself seemed to buckle under the intensity of the battle. The vanguard, powered by the strange forces gifted to them, danced through the chaos, taking advantage of every moment of confusion. Their movements became erratic, unpredictable, an impossible puzzle for the enforcers to solve. But the consequences were becoming evident. The more they bent the laws of physics, the more the universe seemed to fight back. Space itself began to distort, and strange anomalies began to form. Fleeting glimpses of other worlds flashed into view before they vanished, as if the battle was tearing holes in the very fabric of reality. "We're pushing too hard," Lieutenant Martinez said, her voice strained. "The system can't take much more. If we keep this up, we'll break more than just the Council." Rhodes nodded grimly. The cost of their defiance was mounting. The Shroud's help was invaluable, but even they couldn't predict what breaking the laws of the universe would mean in the long term. Was this a victory, or was humanity simply speeding up their own destruction? Suddenly, a blinding light filled the space in front of the vanguard, cutting through the chaos. Rhodes squinted into the glare, and her heart froze. There, at the center of the battlefield, a colossal figure emerged, a being whose presence dwarfed everything around it. It was Esleroth, the leader of the Galactic Council, and he was not alone. Around him, swirling in the vast emptiness, were the enforcers, the true rulers of the cosmic order. "We warned you, human." Esleroth's voice boomed across the comms. "You have shattered the old order. And now, the consequences are upon us all." The immense being that had materialized in the heart of the battle was nothing like the creatures of the Council or the Shroud's forces. Esleroth's presence felt like an entire galaxy compressed into a single entity. He was an enforcer, a living embodiment of the ancient laws that governed the cosmos, and his power stretched beyond comprehension. As he approached, the very space around him seemed to warp, time itself flickering like a broken film reel. "We warned you," his voice echoed, calm but filled with the weight of an inevitable judgment. "Your rebellion will lead to the collapse of everything you hold dear. The universe cannot function without order, and you have shattered that order. There is no turning back." Captain Amelia Rhodes stood firm at the command deck, her face a mask of resolve. Her crew, battered and exhausted, were at their posts, ready to carry out their captain's orders, no matter the cost. "We were never going to fit into your system." "Esleroth," Rhodes replied, her voice steady despite the overwhelming power that now surrounded them. "Humanity doesn't care about your laws anymore. We are the future of this galaxy, and we will reshape it, no matter what it takes." The vanguard shuddered violently as Esleroth extended his hands, sending a pulse of energy that shook the ship to its core. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the crew struggled to maintain their balance as the energy intensified. The fabric of space itself seemed to grow thinner, bending under the crushing pressure. For a moment, Rhodes feared they might be ripped apart. But then, something shifted. The strange power the Shroud had given them, the ability to manipulate the very laws of physics, flared in an impossible way. It wasn't just an energy surge. It was something deeper, something fundamental. Reality itself was bending in their favor. The vanguard systems hummed with unimaginable energy, and the ship's shields began to regenerate at an astonishing rate. The Shroud had not just given them power to break the rules of the universe. They had given them the ability to rewrite them entirely. "Now we break your chains," Rhodes muttered, barely audible over the roaring chaos around them. The crew watched in awe as the stars themselves seemed to shift and move, aligning in patterns that defied the understanding of even the most advanced species. The power they now wielded was more than just raw strength. It was the very essence of change. The Council's ancient laws, their centuries of control, began to crack under the pressure. Esleroth recoiled, his expression one of shock. This should not be possible," he hissed, his voice filled with both fury and disbelief. Captain Rhodes stared into the being's eyes, unwavering. "Maybe not for you, but for us. This is just the beginning." The Vanguard's engines flared to life, brighter and more intense than before. The ship surged forward, cutting through the air of space with a speed that could not be matched. In the blink of an eye, it tore past Asilaroth and his forces, breaking free from the control of the Enforcers and the Shroud alike. For the first time in eons, humanity had the power to define its own fate, unbound by the chains of the old universe. The Council's ships, previously invincible, began to collapse under the strain of the new reality they had created, their energy systems overloaded, their ships buckling as the fabric of the universe fractured. And then, with a final surge, the Vanguard tore through the last of the Council's fleet, sending ripples through space that were felt across the galaxy. For the first time, the old order had been shattered. The universe, which had long been held in place by a few ancient powers, was now in flux. The laws that had bound it for millennia were no more. And humanity was the catalyst for that change. "We've done it," Lieutenant Martinez said, her voice awestruck as she watched the destruction unfold on the screens. "We've really done it." Rhodes nodded, but her expression remained hard, unyielding. "This is just the beginning. The universe will never be the same, and humanity will lead the way." As the Vanguard drifted through the remnants of the battlefield, its crew looked out into the void of space. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before. And for better or worse, humanity's rebellion had changed it forever. The old order was gone. The new era had begun.